All right, well, let's go to Ontario, Canada, and we'll talk with Tim. Hi, Tim. What's on your heart tonight, my friend? What do you got?
Hi. Well, I've got a question regarding the book of Luke.
Yeah.
It's chapter 9, verse 23, where Jesus said, anyone who wants to follow me must put aside his own desires and conveniences and carry his own cross with him daily and keep close to me. And I'm not really sure what that means as far as carrying a cross. Is that something you could help with?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's a very interesting translation that you're reading. I would encourage you to always back that up with a second version, something that's not a paraphrase, something that doesn't sound as much like the Living Bible or the Message or whatever translation you have there. That's great. There's nothing wrong with it for readability, for ease of reading. But sometimes when you grab a different version just as a backup, like for a study Bible, then you're going to see that the wording is not so loose. And in fact, the wording is going to be based more on the original language. So now let's talk about this. It's important, I think, first of all, to note that this word daily, take up your cross daily. Well, imagine trying to kill yourself daily. Imagine you waking up every day saying, I got to get rid of me. I got to kill me. Well, here at the Grace Message, we're constantly highlighting that the gospel is better than that. The gospel is healthier than that. You don't have to wake up every day and try to commit some sort of heroic spiritual suicide upon yourself. You don't have to die to self. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to get rid of yourself spiritually. Why not? Well, first, concerning Luke 9:23, this word daily does not appear in many of the earliest manuscripts of this verse. And notice that it doesn't appear in the other accounts of this teaching. We've got Luke, but of course we also remember there's three other Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and John. And so for example, you go back to the earliest manuscripts, the Codex Sinaiticus, one of the oldest and most complete copies of the New Testament. It omits the word daily in that passage. And then you pop over to Matthew 16:24 and you look at Mark 6:34, and guess what? The word daily is not there. So, how did we end up with the word daily in later manuscripts? Well, many scholars think that somebody, a scribe who was translating and copying, that they had in mind 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul says, I die daily. And so many think that with 1 Corinthians 15:31 in mind, that a scribe got the fancy idea of saying, well, I'm going to embellish this. I'm going to make it better. I'm going to put the word daily in there because of 1 Corinthians where it says, I die daily. Now, there's a big problem with that. Obviously, first of all, they're changing Scripture. But secondly, when you go to 1 Corinthians and you see Paul saying, I die daily, he's not talking about his spiritual self. He is saying that I face wild beasts, that I face wild dogs. On the road to Ephesus, I encountered wild beasts and wild, undomesticated dogs. And he's talking about how daily he is in danger physically, not spiritually needing to eradicate himself. Not spiritually needing to eliminate himself, not trying to kill himself off. That's not what he's saying. I die daily means I encounter physical danger every day as I travel on the road delivering this message. So, with that in mind, that it doesn't appear in many of the earliest manuscripts, that it doesn't appear in Matthew or Mark, that somebody has taken it from 1 Corinthians and copied it over where it doesn't belong, then what do you conclude? Well, all we're saying is the gospel's beautiful, and the gospel is not about you getting rid of you. And so what happened at salvation? If you take the word daily out of that, what happened? Well, you can read what happened all over the New Testament. There's a resounding message. I have been crucified with Christ. Notice that's in past tense, Galatians 2:20. I'm not trying to be crucified. I have been crucified, Galatians 2:20. How about Romans chapter 6? My old self died with him, past tense. My old self died with him. How about Colossians 2? Our old self died with him, it says. Since you've died with Christ, past tense. So whether it's Colossians or Romans or Galatians or any other passage in the New Testament, and there are many, what happened at salvation is a past tense surgery where you got included. You were included in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. Now, this should not be a shock to the Christian world today. Unfortunately, it is, because it's so rarely taught. But make no mistake, what I'm describing is simply the idea of being born again. But you cannot be born again unless you die first. And so that's what salvation is. Salvation is you take up your cross, you follow Jesus into death, you are crucified with him, buried with him, and then you are raised to newness of life. Now, there's nothing daily about that. If you're the new self, you don't need to die. I guess I could ask it this way. Hey, Christian, why are you trying to kill yourself if you're the new self? Why are you trying to kill what God has called new? Why are you trying to get rid of what God has transformed and made new? So out with the old, in with the new. Your old self died. You were born again. So somebody says, all right then, what should I do? What should I do every day? Well, here's what Paul says to do. He says, count yourself dead to sin and count yourself alive to God. Now that sounds really healthy. So if there's something we should do every day, it is to remember who we are. How about we remember our new identity and we count on it? I'm going to count myself dead to sin and alive to God. And right there, that's going to be a huge help when temptation comes, the nasty thought, the sinful thought. When it comes to the gateway of my mind, I can say, I am dead to that thought. Through Christ, I have died to that thought. I'm dead to sin, and I'm alive to you, God. So, Tim, I want to put you back on and see. Does that bring some clarity, my friend?
Yes, it does, Andrew. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Amazon dropped your book off on my doorstep today, Gospel Zero. It's a great read. I recommend all of your listeners buy one. You'll get a good kick out of it. It's really down-to-earth language, and it's very easy to understand, and it puts a new perspective. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Tim, thanks for saying that. I love the encouragement. We're jazzed that you're jazzed and that so many are getting Gospel Zero even in the last week. And again, thanks for your question, because you know what? There are people, candidly, people sitting in church for 20, 30, 50 years, and they still don't know. Hey, Christian, you don't have to die to self every day. Die to self is a term that does not exist in the Bible. We made it up. Die to self. You can Google it. You can look at it on Bible Gateway. It's not there. It's not in the Scriptures. We don't have to try to die to self because our old self died, Romans 6. And there is a difference. It's not semantics. It's a question of, am I going to believe that I'm dirty and distant and need to be killed, progressively killed off, or am I going to believe that I'm the new self that is in union with Jesus? And folks, only one of those messages is healthy. The other one is morbid and ugly and destructive, and no wonder you're miserable if you're believing you have to get rid of you. So, Tim, I love that you brought the topic to the table and that you're hanging out with us, connected with our ministry. Please call us back anytime. Great question.